Hi everyone, Dr. Chellam again out for our Wednesday afternoon podcast. Today is going to be really very interesting because we have the real doctors in the room. And we have Jason and Chelsea. And they are who you should know if you want to think about health and wellness. So Jason, why don't you introduce yourself and let us know who you are so they know why you are the best doctor.
My name's Jason Smetsky. I am a market gardener is what I like to call myself. I'm a farmer, basically. And we really focus on not only sustainable farming, but also nutrient-dense food.
I love that, nutrient-dense food. That's our takeaway from most things is, are you eating a nutrient-dense food? So what is a market gardener? How is it different from a traditional farmer?
The reason I call myself a market gardener is because of the scale that we're on. Mm-hmm. So we are only on about 3/4 of an acre. We, in our grand scheme, we only plan to go on a couple of acres.
Okay.
And we can actually do a lot more than you can think on an acre. We use things like multiple crops per bed throughout the year, intensive spacing, and a lot of other tricks to get a lot of food off of a little space.
So basically, you do a lot of diversity
yes.
rather than just one particular crop.
Exactly, yes.
And does that make it easy or harder? Because everything has, there's a crop cycle, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it probably balances out because in one sense, if some crop goes wrong, we have other crops to rely on. Like this year when all of our brassicas got eaten by groundhogs, if we were only brassica farmers, we would,
have nothing.
Yeah. But in another sense, it makes it harder because there's a lot of planning and there's a lot of moving parts. And so making sure that stays going all year can be very difficult.
What's your growing season like?
Right now, our growing season starts in January in a basement. We get our tomatoes and peppers started under lights, and that's so we can get tomatoes in beginning of July, I would say.
Wow, that's some planning ahead.
Yeah, and then it goes...
Patience.
Yeah.
It goes to about November. But the way that we learned, we went to a program at MSU called the Student Organic Farm, and we learned about growing year-round in hoop houses. We're just building our infrastructure to be able to get to that point. So hopefully one day we'll be able to grow spinach, greens, kale, all sorts of stuff coming out in January. And if you guys have ever had spinach out of a greenhouse in January, it's a completely different experience than spinach in
the taste.
July. Yes, because the sugars in the plant, the natural sugars, the plant creates more of them as a natural antifreeze. Oh. And so the spinach, it's just like the taste is night and day compared to...
Wow. We should go there and get that. Let's get to Chelsea also. Chelsea, so are you the backbone?
Maybe. He does have a lot of good ideas. He's kind of like, all right, this is what we're doing today, and he has it all set in his mind. And I guess I'm more of like, I don't want to say the face.
You're the face. She emails me from your email, and I'm always talking to Chelsea. I get so confused.
I know, I think we need to change this, but yeah, I do a lot of like marketing and
so you're
talking with talking with CSA members, and I'm the one that's always at market selling everything.
So you're basically his agent. He does. Yes. He comes up with the.
And she should.
I'm his manager. I get his products out there.
She's out there with me harvesting and
planting
a lot of the times too.
Okay, so let me ask you this: how is your life typically like? How does your day begin and how does it end? A typical day.
We gotta get to the farm early. There's always water concerns are very big to us. So
in Michigan?
Well, just our plants. So a lot of our plants we start in trays that are filled with soil, and so we got these baby plants. And so when we leave for the day at 6 or 7, they spend the entire night, and they're also in a hoop house that a lot of the times has to be closed at night, open during the day. So it's getting there early and making sure that all of those are well watered. And then it is basically figuring out what tasks we're going to do that day, planting, harvesting, doing all that stuff. And then our day ends the same way that it begins, basically like taking care of those little guys is our main priority.
Till they become strong enough.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why didn't-
luckily this time of year,
Mhm.
it's like we're done with transplants.
Yes.
So we
Oh.
can, yeah, it's a little bit easier. We don't have to worry about getting over there at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. to make sure they're not
Because
dying.
there's nothing else for planting.
Maybe
Season's
we should
about to be
just-
done.
We should try selling them some tower gardens. Might make it easier for them.
Yeah.
It waters on its own on a
Yeah.
timer.
Oh,
Yeah.
wish.
I wonder if you can get a timer to do it, or you need a timer and a sensor
You
then,
can.
right?
The reason that I don't go with timers is because a lot of the different plants, one that we started 2 weeks before another one, we might go the next day, and the ones that are smaller might not need to be watered. And
yes.
overwatering is just as big of a concern as underwatering.
Got it.
The other reason is because when you turn on a timer, you tend to spend less time with your plants. And so you miss out on like, oh, there's a little bug infestation starting. We need to pull that plant out to make sure that doesn't turn into a major problem. Whereas if you're there like watering, you can be like, oh, there's a bug, you know. So that's the main reason that I don't use timers.
The one thing I will say right now is pay extra for this homegrown food, because listen to how crazy this is. All of this effort that goes into it.
So really, one of the things I asked, if we have in the room that you don't see on camera, our medical student, and I
If you're on
asked you.
Instagram, you do see it because I keep posting it.
Oh, okay. So one of the things she wanted to know is why is it? I'm sorry. What is the benefit of getting a produce from a farm rather than getting it from a superstore where they just say we go early in the morning to the farmers market and buy it. Of course, they make a little profit off of it. But besides that, why would I go to a farmer instead of just going to the supermarket?
Well, I think it's like most big supermarkets, like when you're talking about Kroger or Meijer, stuff like that, you have to think about where was that produce grown and how long did it take for the salad mix to get from point A to point B, which that's the biggest one I come up with, let alone like pesticides, whatever you use on it. You can't ask them directly what that is.
Yes.
So there's also a huge like transportation cost. And I forget the number now, but there's something like the amount of energy it takes to get that food from that point to us to where we eat it is nowhere near the amount of energy that we get from it. Like we get a lot less energy from that food than it takes to grow it and produce it. And then also if you buy from a local farmer, you get to talk to great bubbly people like us.
Yes.
And then
that's true.
and like your food's harvest, like we harvest all of our food like that day, like most of it that day. Like winter squash is really hard to harvest like that day because it's like all at once, or tomatoes, but it's usually within like the past couple of days. Like that's like our food is like super fresh. None of like the nutrients or anything have evaporated out of it yet.
And that's very important. So when you're talking about the nutrient density, the more time it takes from farm to plate and the more miles it travels, one of a very popular nutritionist who works out of India, she always says, the more your food travels from farm to plate, the more your navel travels from your spine outward. So that's one of the reasons you're not nutrient dense. You tend to eat more, you tend to gain more weight. So this is a very nutrient dense, basically unaltered food, just fresh, and I'm sure the taste is very different.
And I think that's a major problem with our food system now, is that because a lot of the produce is grown out west in California and Arizona, they've bred a lot of vegetables for shelf life. And that's what we try to explain to our customers at the market, is that a lot of times you're sacrificing taste and you're sacrificing nutrient density because they want these things to be able to last 3 weeks on the shelf.
Correct.
And so it's hard to get a good tasting tomato that's able to ship across the country and not have like bruises and cut up and everything like that. So. And
that's another thing that's very, it's a very important point you bring. Vegetables, when they're grown, literally are imperfect. But when you get to the supermarket, everything looks perfect. The banana is perfect. Everything is similar length, similar color. Tomatoes are the same things. So that is not natural.
No.
And I don't think people realize that, because I think the first time I got eggs from somebody who has chickens in their farm, not one egg was look like the other.
Yeah. It's crazy.
We have a funny story about Jason's mom. When we first brought home like farm fresh eggs from school where we went, she would not eat them at first because she said the yolks were too yellow. They were too golden. And she was like, no, that's weird. Like, I don't think they should be like that yellow because she's used to like the pale grocery store egg of.
We don't even know what our food is supposed to look like.
And
Yeah.
that is the truth. And the truth is like, we don't know what the eggs actually look like. They have different color shells.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's something that's natural, that some.
Yeah, it's basically a the variety of, or the breed of bird.
Mm.
So different chickens lay different eggs. And the reason that you normally see the standard white egg is because those are chickens that have been bred to produce like above 200 eggs a year. Whereas most chickens a natural chicken does not
Like
lay that
at most,
many.
like probably like maybe 100 to 150.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be like every other day, like a chicken will pop one out.
So this is similar to the carrots. And just so, and if you're watching, if you can see the carrots, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but these carrots don't look like the typical carrots which we draw in the coloring books, like perfect long triangle with no roots. I mean, this is, and so this on top is, I guess, a decorative eggplant, right? You
Yes.
said?
Pumpkin on a stick.
A pumpkin on a stick. That's
And
what
it's
called.
actually on a stick. There's a bunch of little pumpkins on sticks that we have
I
back
don't know
there
if you
behind
can
us.
actually see it on camera. It's right behind, which is on a little mason jar. They look like wildflowers, but there's a lot of wild effort put to grow them. So that's something to just take note of. So a couple of other quick questions. What is it more expensive to get products from a farm simply because you guys put in so much of effort and it's not, kind of manufactured? It's not like those patented seeds that you just do certain things and it grows and like looks like you guys are raising babies.
I think
They're little babies.
I think there's multiple issues with the cost. I think the scale that we do it, the bigger you scale up, the cheaper it's going to be for people, but you're also going to lose that intimacy that gets you really good tasting carrots and really nutrient dense tasting carrots. I think that our food, we've kind of, because of the methods that they've been growing with synthetic fertilizers and everything, the cost of the environmental implications of how a lot of farmers grow food is not taken into account. And so what we pay for a bunch of carrots, let's say in the grocery store, I think is an unrealistic number for what those carrots are actually worth. And when people get used to those prices being so low, now they come to you and they try to buy your carrots for $1 more a bunch, let's say, that I think are the real value, that these are the input, we're not trying to make a ton of money off of our carrots. These are just the real inputs and the real cost of doing business on a smaller scale and doing it more environmentally friendly. And
giving you more nutrient dense food.
Exactly.
That actually shifts your health.
Exactly, because when you do practices that are not good for the environment, you usually end up producing not as nutrient dense food. I think.
I was gonna say, so like that person's not paying the cost, but someone eventually is going to pay the extra cost.
The insurance and medical insurance and medical bills.
And yep, medical, and then like the environmental factor, like for our children and grandchildren. And
it's a funny thing. As much as we talk about the future, as much as we talk about prevention, nobody really cares other than the present moment. Today, if they can enjoy life, that's all they care about. This is what I've learned. I mean, there's a very small group of people who worry about the soil, who worry about leaving a better planet to the kids. But when you really look at in the moment, people think, why would I pay $1 extra for these carrots that are not even half as perfect as the one I get in the grocery store, which I don't even have to clean as much as I would have to clean this. The knowledge behind that is, I think, the education is what is missing. Most people just think this is what carrots are like. All they have to do is try something like this that comes from a farm. And so that leads me to the next question. Do you guys do anything educational on your farm? Can we actually bring out people certain days just so that people can be educated about how the food is different and why we should support farmers like you?
Yeah, we'd love to have people come out, work something up like that, because like that's one of our main things. I grew up at 8 Mile and Inkster. Like my family, everything came out of a box or out of a can. We'd have like maybe a bag of apples, and like I can't even tell you how much pop I drank as a child. It's, you know, I won't show you my teeth, but just trust me, a lot of cavities. And so when we went to the program at MSU, like I didn't eat tomatoes, I didn't eat peppers, I didn't eat eggplants or any of that stuff. And then once I tried it, like from growing it and then eating it, it was like, this is amazing. This is delicious. How come people don't eat like this? And so like, I just want to like get it out and like let kids try it. Cause like, you know, so many parents, it's not parents' fault because they're busy or that's what they learned how to cook or like, you know, stuff like that. But just, yeah.
So you guys should actually start at the school level, you know, where they probably should learn a few things, maybe getting, if there are any school teachers anyone knows, please let us know.
I'll get in on that because I love that kind of
Yeah.
school farming stuff. But
It's funny you said that because last year we went to was it a kindergarten?
I think it was a preschool.
Preschool.
Yeah.
And because we had a lady come to the market and say she asked her students, where does your food come from? And they all said the grocery store. And she said, so what we actually did was we brought in a bin full of soil and we harvested carrots and we replanted them just to like show them like, hey, this is like, do you see the carrot top? And this is, you don't normally see carrots like this. It's actually the root. And we kind of showed them like, and we let them dig through the soil.
Right.
And it's crazy how responsive kids can be when they can like get their hands dirty and it's like it blows their minds that this is where food comes from.
And how they'll eat it too, because the little girl that I nanny, she'll be like, no, I don't eat that. I don't like that. Or what did she say? She hated cucumbers, right? And I'm like, but you're eating pickles right now. And she's like, yeah, I love pickles. Like pickles are cucumbers. Like you like cucumbers. And she's like, no, I don't like cucumbers. But, you know, I brought out some hummus, a little bit of cucumbers that we grew, which she lives on the farm, so she knows about it. And she was like, oh, I like cucumbers. And I was like, yeah.
So again, this is really about education. So really a couple of things that I guess we'd like to know is how do we support local farms? It's almost like that's what we ought to do in order to move a little more back to the basics. This is really talking about moving back to the basics, except that we moved away from the basics because the basics were so hard. And so industrialization has given us the abundance, the food abundance. So whenever a drought hits some farmer, who cares? We still have our food kind of a thing. But at the same time, it's taken us away from the basics of our health. So how do we support? What is the thing that we can support you so that way we continue to get the nutrient-dense food? I mean, obviously, it's a symbiotic relationship.
For sure. I would say one of the biggest struggles, this is our 4th year of production. I like to say it's our 2nd real year of production because the first 2 years were spent pulling rocks out of the field and growing a little bit of cabbage. But when if you go to farmers markets or if you see people online, just giving them that initial support of maybe they don't have the best looking bunch of carrots or the best, looking thing of broccoli, but it takes a while, a couple of years to really learn the practices to get them down. We did not have carrots like that our first 3 years. We had maybe 1 or 2 that would pop up with a bed full of weeds.
Yeah, because
weeding carrots is the worst.
Yes.
Everything looks the same.
Yeah. And because, like you're saying, like we took a field that was like, you drive by anything that's just full of weeds. Like we took that field and it takes so much work to like turn that into beds that aren't 100% weeds, and like now they're just kind of like maybe 50% weeds, but you have that soil health and.
Yeah, so what I would say is if you see, imperfect food or especially farmers that if you talk to them and it's their first couple of years, just trying to, buy that 1 or 2 things from their stand that look decent from you, that goes a long way to actually getting us to that next step, which is buying that next tool, which is going to give you better looking carrots and everything like that.
And then you could also say a lot of farms have something called a CSA or community supported agriculture.
Yes.
And if you go to the store and like you buy your produce and then if you count like how much per week you're spending on produce, Like our CSA, it's $25 a week, and you get 8 to 12 items. A lot of the items in there, you can just snack on them. You don't need to cook them. And then there's a couple things that you can cook with, like our winter squash now. But just making that transition from buying it at the store to buying it direct from the farmer. And like, it's a little bit weird because you don't exactly know every week, like what exactly you're going to get, but just being open to eating like what's in season, because that's going to be fresher and tastier too. And then you get like all those different nutrients too, that you wouldn't normally eat something maybe, but then you try it and you like it.
So we're rolling into winter, though we are just the beginning of fall, but fall means winter's arriving. I know that's being like a pessimistic view of things. However, for those of us who can, in the winter season, we still want to eat like we have all the foods. What would you say are the things that people can, if they want to grow some food on their own, what do you think that they can grow in their basement with lighting and other stuff during the winter season?
Microgreens. Yeah. You get a couple lights. They're called microgreens or shoots. Like you get some nice pea shoots out there. It's the exact same thing. You just, you get a bucket of dirt and you get a tray like that and you can water it. And then in probably about 2 weeks in the winter, would you say, for them to sprout? Unless your basement's pretty warm, I suppose. But, and then like pea shoots alone, they have like a lot of more vitamin C in pea shoots, and in a cup of pea shoots have more vitamin C than a cup of blueberries. So
is that what we have out there, pea shoots?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can eat that?
Yes.
Oh, am I going to kill the plant if I do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're eating the top of the plant, but
So let me ask you that. Would you be willing to teach people how to grow during the winter season? Is that something that you would be open to?
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and
That might be a good way to, I feel like ultimately the best thing is we have to grow our own food, but of course nobody can do it on a grand scale like somebody who owns a half an acre or 3/4 of an acre or even 2 acres. But what we could do is, what is the barest minimum for our family that we can grow? And what kind of crops would you say we should be able to grow in our home? What do you think we can grow besides the pea shoots and some microgreens? Is there anything else that we can grow?
I don't know, just because it's so difficult. It needs so much light.
Yeah, probably lettuce heads just because they're quick. I've never tried them, but I've heard of people growing them in pots in their basement.
Okay.
I would go for things that are like shorter turnaround.
Okay.
So like radishes only take like 30 or 45 days. It might take a little bit longer in your basement because you're not getting the same light as the sun and everything.
Yeah.
But like radishes, lettuce, stay away from things like carrots take like 80 days. So it's just not going to be a very productive long-term
like potatoes
solution.
would be crazy to grow in a basement.
But what I would say too, and to get back to your question about supporting local farmers, is there is a lot more people locally, which I didn't realize this until we kind of took our class, that not only can you grow a lot of greens over winter in Michigan, but you can also grow beets, carrots, rutabagas,
Turnips, kale.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff that you put in a cooler, and you can have those until February. And I think getting that is a lot probably fresher and more nutrient dense just because it's been grown in a local area and stored than shipped across the country. So I would say trying to look for farms like that have the capability, and we hope to get there one day where it's just we're so new, but we'd like to get a greenhouse full of spinach and kale and everything like that. So
So the other thing that just popped in my head is like, I know the winter season is like really down for farming as such. So, but we all want to have, food like regular stuff. Do you guys even have animals on your farm, or do you just do plants? We're a plant-based practice,
Gotcha.
but we do have a lot of clients of ours who love to have eggs and animal products. But would you guys do that?
Where we're at now, it just doesn't make sense because we rent that acreage from the people that we work with, and then but we just got 30 acres after like years of looking for our own land, which after a couple of not exactly next year, but maybe the year after, we'll start bringing chickens, of course, because eggs are just
amazing.
Yeah, eggs are amazing. You do
The
protein and like Oh man, make your own pasta. And then probably goats, because goats will like eat down all the stuff around. Maybe we'll try and milk them. I don't know too much about that, but there's plans like in the future once we get all the other things like keyed in. Yeah.
Okay, good. And is there, let me ask you this. Did you get to just happen to go to a class, or is it something that made you interested? Was there a journey that made you interested in growing your own food?
So I don't think we both had very much experience with growing our own food.
No, I had none.
my grandparents both had like victory gardens. Do you guys know what victory gardens are? After World War II, or during World War II, they encouraged that generation. They said, okay, because of the war effort, there's not going to be a lot of farms.
Mm-hmm.
So they encourage people to plant what they call victory gardens, which are basically big gardens in your backyard, and so you wouldn't be supporting on as many farmers because they knew that they weren't going to have enough people. So both of my grandparents came from that generation, and they both had massive gardens when I was younger. And that was like my only experience, because I was kind of the same with Chelsea, where it's like, we maybe grew a tomato plant here or there, but a lot of our stuff came out of boxes, and
if your parents go through that like traditional route, and so it's like, oh, like this is the way that America's going, where you're, you come home and you kind of just get all stuff from the grocery store and you put it together into a meal for your family, and like that's what they say is good enough.
Yeah, but I think our parents' generation is the first one that was really like moved away from farming completely.
Yeah.
Because everything was so much about convenience.
Yes.
And now we're the generation that's like, no, we want to go back to that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So how do we know if the soil is good enough to grow? I mean, like if you see our tower garden just has sponge, but I think the food that comes from it is still tasty. I just don't know what it's going to be once I come to your farm, or when I have this nice little, I don't know if you guys can see this baby kale.
Yep, baby kale. Yeah.
Baby kale, I'll tell you the difference. But in general, how do we know if the soil is good? Do you get it tested for minerals and vitamins?
We do get it tested,
Okay.
and we go a little bit further than the normal nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, or phosphorus, potassium. We actually go into micronutrients, like calcium, and there's like a whole list of them.
Do you check for iodine and selenium and stuff like that, or no?
Is iodine? I think you can get iodine. I don't think it's one that we test for.
Okay, got
The
it.
reason we test for those other ones is because I recently came across this about a year ago about remineralizing your fields. And basically it's just taking rock dust that they take from like mining operations and putting that back on your field, and then and the most important thing is your field needs to be microbial alive to break down those rock powders to make it available to the plants. And
That's why you need animals.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's
Right?
true. Animals
They
do
can-
help that. But I think one of the biggest things is, and what we're learning is that no-till. So a lot of people, when they think of gardens, they think of getting their rototiller in there so that you can just put your hand in there like a foot down in the soil. And that is devastating the microbes in your soil.
Wow.
Oh.
And there's this interesting thing that plants, through photosynthesis, they create sugars. And you'd think that a lot of those sugars would be going to the plant. But actually like 90% of the sugars go into the soil to feed the microbes, because it's kind of a symbiotic relationship where
That's
they're
so
like,
cool.
Yeah,
This
so-
whole thing,
Love
I mean, if you look at the design of the world, it's all the same. Diversity, whether it be human beings, whether it be bacteria, whether it be in the soil, the minerals, we just need to be diverse. And the second thing is also how an ecosystem works,
Yes.
how we literally, the source of energy, ubiquitous everywhere, is the sun. If you don't have something that can capture that energy, you don't have energy. It's as simple as that. So the photosynthesis
and microbes are the thing that, it's almost like plants are the thing that captures that energy from the sun, but the microbes are the thing that holds on to it. And so it allows that long-term succession. And so when you say, is your soil good? If you dig down into it, it should be like a darker color, I guess. It should always smell very good if it starts to...
Soil smells good?
I think so.
The good soil smells.
That's good.
So the compost that we put on, it's got like a earthy, it should be the color of like coffee. fluffy grounds almost.
Okay.
A lot of the times people get stuff that stinks, and what that is that's anaerobic. So so that's
Oh.
different microbes getting in there that don't have enough oxygen, and those are very devastating to your plants overall. So, but the one thing that I tell people that are in our garden is, and I'm like, I know you want that really fluffy soil, but if you just get used to not tilling even as deep, even if you can keep that tillage to the top inch, it's going to help those microbes so much, which is in turn going to help your plants. And you'll see after a couple of years, it's that thing that you're talking about where people want that immediate response, but it's something that takes a while to build up before you get that response.
So can you actually check the diversity of the microbes? Do you guys check that?
You can. So I got really geeked out this winter and I watched all these videos, and for my birthday, I asked for a $300 microscope. And you can go down there, and it's really hard because, like, I don't know, you guys ever look through a microscope, it's just like little squiggly dots moving around. And then you got to go in these books and be like, is that a good one or a bad one?
How big is that squiggly dot? Is that big?
Definitely a big learning curve, but we're trying to see. And it's crazy to see different parts of the field, like, oh my God, this stuff has a lot of bacteria in it, or this stuff has nothing in it. And it's just, you know, the part of the field that has nothing in it is usually something that's been run over a bunch of times. It's where we dry.
We can kill potentially the mycobacteria by just disturbing the soil.
For sure. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with the food system in general is we do so much tillage that we're ruining our soil. And the only reason we can do that is because they use synthetic nitrogen. And so that's giving the plants the short-term food that it needs. But really, I heard someone describe it as synthetic nitrogen is almost like steroids for plants or something. Like it's making them really strong, but at the same time, exactly, a short period, and it's killing off the soil, which those microbes are also the thing that can absorb the water when you have too much, when you have flooding. It can also keep water when you have drought. It holds on to the nutrients. You can have a whole most people don't know, like the whole field can have all the nutrients you could ever think of to grow your plants, but they're just locked up and the plants can't get to them. So that's why you have to keep adding the synthetic nutrients. But if you get those microbes working again, then all of a sudden it allows everything to flourish.
This is
just like your gut.
Just as your gut. Basically, what is outside in the soil is what's in your gut.
Yeah.
And
it's very true. I think it's crazy how much microbes rule this world, and I think that's something that we're just
right now. I know. Actually, this is so interesting. It's almost like we should move our practice close to their farm.
I should rewrite my book.
And that's what I'm learning about too, which you guys probably know, is how much your gut bacteria affects your mental state. And, oh my God, how much you've been reading about that.
Yeah,
It's
which
just
means
amazing.
basically we just have to eat the food you guys make and we would be mentally
Eat the dirt on the carrots.
Yeah, eat the dirt. That's the other thing, guys. Don't keep doing sanitization. Every time I see that that liquid out in the grocery stores, we take the vegetables, we are wiping and then taking the vegetables. I mean, that's literally, we're killing everything around us. So I
think another thing too is for a lot of vegetables, the most nutrients can be found in their skin. So a lot of people like to peel things because they don't like that little bit of dirt on there. But I would say try to get a brush and just brush off as much. And like, I'll take carrots out of the field like that have a little dirt on them, and I'll eat them. And people will think I'm crazy because there's dirt on them, but
that was my question. Like, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
I actually don't like to wash things. I'm lazy.
I always like to think of like, okay, would this, like, what did we're not cavemen. But like back in the day, or it's just like, oh, the cavemen would just pull that out of the ground probably and just eat it with a huge amount of dirt on it. And, you know, that's pretty clean compared to that. And like,
So that's why I guess it's important to know the soil, because you could have the wrong kind of bacteria in the soil. And I think that's how this whole thing started, where your immune system could not take the bacteria. That's how you get the extra infection. But again, so somebody who wants to start gardening in their own little space, where would they go to get their soil tested? Do they just look for places? Does the state provider help, I guess?
They do provide some. The problem is a lot of the land-grant universities are very synthetically minded, if I can say that. So the soil tests that they give you are normally the big three: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. There are other places that you can get more comprehensive test. When you're talking about just a garden, though, I would say just trying to look for a really high-quality compost and adding that, and that's going to add in so much of the stuff that you're missing, that if you just add in a couple of rounds of big, healthy compost. And like I said, when you go to find that compost, you should be smelling it and making sure it's not like completely stinky. I mean, it's not going to smell like roses, but it's got a nice earthy
Like a
smell.
sweet, earthy smell.
Yeah.
Will it be like when, after rain falls on earth, there's a smell that comes up?
It is kind
Almost
of close to
similar?
that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And when you say the compost is like what is fertilizing the soil, but what about, like, do you guys use pesticides to prevent bug infestation?
So we practice integrated pest management, which is
Okay.
basically we monitor the pests and we only spray when absolutely necessary. And then the things that we're spraying are, well, first off, they're all organically approved, but I think even some of the organic pesticides can be a little bit harsh. And so we really try to research it and go for the ones that we think are the least effect on humans, and usually those are the ones that last the least amount in the environment. So the common one that we use, which is I think the only thing we sprayed this year,
BT?
yes, it's called Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a natural bacteria
Mm-hmm.
that you spray on plants, and then when the bugs eat that bacteria, it makes them not hungry anymore, and they stop eating.
Oh,
And so
we need that for anorexia, for weight loss.
Yeah, right?
And then, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then too, but, instead of automatically jumping to that spray, if, we'll plant more of a certain thing, because we'll be like, all right, like the bugs are going to eat 20% of this.
Okay.
Like, that's fine. But if they go over that or like way over that, then we'll spray. Or we will use things like row cover, insect netting, to keep the bugs off. Before they can even eat
That's
the
very
plants.
big for us, is netting that goes over our plants.
That's the
like,
biggest thing we use is like netting.
if we grow arugula, if we don't cover the arugula, guarantee it's going to have a bunch of holes in it from
flea beetles.
Yeah, from flea beetles. And so the only way you can beat that is either spray it with something or cover it with this netting, and then they can't get in there.
That's an important point to make, though, too, because you said things are organic and they're still harsh for you. So when you're at the grocery store and you're buying all this bulk organic stuff, you don't know what organic products they use.
Do you guys know who the biggest organic supplier is?
Here we go.
It's Walmart. Walmart, they'll buy all the farms and stuff. So they own the production and so, they'll go and they'll fight for, like, I think recently, I don't want to get political, but I think they're
we will here.
lessening the restrictions on how you can treat animals in like organic settings. Which
You got your lobbyists and they're getting
Right.
around the organic
I mean, it's all a
stuff.
money game, and that's why it's very important for those of us. Our practice also is very unique in that we don't look at you, diagnose you with the disease, and give you a drug. We are trying to tell people we work with your root cause, change the diversity of the bacteria in your gut, and that's how we help people. So obviously, when I'm one of those doctors that gets paid directly by the consumer, not by the insurance for that kind of work. So it's mind-blowing to people. Why would I pay a doctor? It's the same thing. You know, you're paying for what I am going to put, the effort I'm going to put into you for your personalized medicine or personalized care, I should say. And you guys are making personalized medicine, actually, which you can actually grow to completely prevent disease. Because if you eat like the way, like you guys have kids, they're going to be absolutely healthy because they're never going to know boxed foods. This is what they will be raised on. So I think that's really the cool thing is people need to understand they pay upfront so that later on they're not paying all of what they saved in healthcare costs.
Yeah. And a market customer of mine one time told me, she was from, I want to say she was from France. And she said, if you look at what Europeans pay for their food compared to their health care, it's the opposite of what Americans pay. And she said the thing in Europe is that so many more people use food to stay healthy so that they don't have to have the health care, whereas Americans eat crappier diets to get sick so that they could pay for health care. And it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it's not all of Europe. I think most of Europe does drink and eat meat.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
Yeah. It's a very big generalization.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that, one of the things that happens is there's a lot of what do you call camaraderie. People hang out with each other when they
Yes.
eat, which is very different. So we, first of all, we isolate ourselves because of privacy issues. We don't want anybody to know our business. So I mean, the only time I know there are kids in my subdivision is on Halloween, because otherwise I didn't know that they,
It's crazy,
you know,
right?
there are kids around. And then we don't want to pay for our health care, but we want to stay healthy. Then we don't want to pay too much for our food, but then we talk about how organic farming is so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at how the process of growing these things, it's almost like raising a child, and you're raising a child over and over and over again every year.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that would help us, I'm sure both of you can, not that you have, I know you have a lot of extra time to do this for us, but is to give us a sheet that gives us the crop cycles of the common vegetables and fruits that we would like to have, just so that we know what is the effort that goes into
Mm-hmm.
each of these crops. If we just have like a sheet, and I think if we have it in our practice, we can show people, and also letting us know what is seasonal in Michigan during the winter season and what they can buy from a cooler from a farmer.
For sure.
Right? Those are the things that would help us educate, because we're right in the middle of a suburb, and people come to us. We can initiate the education, and then of course at some point, Chelsea, if you can create these maybe once a month, a tour around the farm or just an educational class, I'm sure we'll gather enough people to come to that. And even if they have to pay a small ticket amount, $5-10, I think we can do that, and people will be willing to learn.
Yeah.
So it's something to consider doing. So the way we look at health is not from a standpoint of disease. By the time you have the disease, I look at disease as a symptom, not as a condition.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as a symptom. So when you are a diabetic, your diabetes is a symptom of an underlying metabolic problem.
You know what's so funny about that is that's the same way I've started to look at my vegetables. That if they get a disease, it's not necessarily that they have a problem with that disease. It's that there's something going on with the soil.
Yes.
That they are being unhealthy, and that's the role of disease in nature, is
Yes.
to take out the unhealthy plants.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised when we have like one broccoli plant that just looks awesome and does huge, and all the rest of them are getting eaten, but that one just doesn't get touched. And
Yes.
it's like, if it's healthy off
Yes.
the bat.
Yes.
And I was just reading this thing about how if plants have complete proteins, certain insects can't even digest them completely because they don't have the enzymes or whatever.
Yes.
So the only way that when you see plant damage, you can be or pest damage, you can be assured that that plant does not have a complete protein.
Okay.
And the reason is because it's got to build all of its carbohydrates first, and then its lipids. And it's got to go all through all of these things before it gets complete proteins. And so to not say that if there's a bug on your plant, it's completely unhealthy, and it's not. But if there is no pest damage at all, and you see that across your garden, or very little, you can be assured that you're growing a very healthy plant that's going to be very nutritious to you.
So you can actually take the seed of that plant and continue to plant it.
You can,
So-
but I think it'd be more about where you're planting that seed.
Seed,
If you take
the
that
soil.
seed and you plant it in a
Bad.
bad soil, it's probably not going to do as well. But there's definitely something to say about the genetics being passed down from one to the other.
So
The environment that your genetics are in.
yes. Yeah.
You guys have all heard that before.
So that's the epigenetics. Now we have it for plants. We have it for a disease process. So like I said, when we see disease, we tell people that's not because you're cursed with that condition. It's just we have to see what does your body need so that disease goes away.
What's the
Yes.
environment?
And what do we need to remove from your environment so that you don't have that disease? And I think that concept most people don't understand. Medical school doesn't teach you. We are taught to learn to diagnose the disease early and manage it early, but not resolve it. And the only resolution that we talk to patients about is go exercise and eat healthy, which as we speak to people like you, we have no freaking clue what eat healthy means anymore, right? So is there anything else that I'm not asking that I should ask? And are there any questions that people have?
If you guys have questions right now, it'd probably be the time to ask Jason and Chelsea. Otherwise, we'll have lots of information from their farm, I'm sure.
And we will get you guys that little information on the crop cycle and maybe a little card on what is the best plants we can grow at home ourselves. Thank you.
Mhm. And so one other thing I learned, maybe you can like tell us a little bit more about this, about ugly plants and things. That's like their defense if there's a bug on them or whatever, right? And that actually produces more antioxidants. Do you have any?
Yeah, so I think
We've heard, we've read that before where, like, you know, if the plant gets attacked, it's supposed to be releasing more to fight off that bug, and that is supposedly supposed to be really good for us. I don't remember where I read that.
We might have read the same thing.
I know. But, I mean, that's what I said to people is, like, you know, don't be afraid of this food just because, like, sometimes our carrots will have, we have a pest that's called a wireworm. There's also a root maggot, which both sound really gross, but it's really just, they'll do, unless it's like really decimated, they'll really only do kind of like a little blemish on the carrot, to where you'll see like a black mark and it's like, oh, gross, I don't want to eat that. But if you just kind of, you know,
Pull the black mark.
yeah, just kind of like shave that little part off and the rest of it's totally good. Like our best food, we send to market and then we eat the stuff that's left
So you're
over.
getting the good stuff.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
super
because
humans.
nobody else really, you know, some people like, oh, I love I love all of our customers, but especially the ones that'll come up and I'll be like, yeah, you know this, and they'll be like, oh, I don't care, it's whatever, like it's fine. Or I'll be like, oh, this is, you know, our holy arugula because flea beetles ate it, and like maybe like 2 people out of 5 will be like, no, but then other people are like, oh, it means it's more peppery, okay, give it to me, like.
Awesome.
So really it comes down to to summarize your microbial diversity and the quality of the microbes in the soil is very important. Don't till your soil, so don't disturb too much.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to grow good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Know your crop cycles and pretty much what else am I missing on the summary of this?
Pay your
conversation?
farmers a little extra for your local foods. You don't have to pay your
That's
health
pretty
bills
much.
later on.
So yeah, the more you pay for your food, the less you're going to pay for your medical bills. And really pretty much there's something else that really tied in. Oh, anything that looks blemished and diseased might actually be good for you
Mm-hmm.
because they've done all the fight and you don't have to fight.
And it's like, you know, if you go and you get frozen veggies from the store, it's like you're eating the blemished gross food.
Yes.
It's like they just put it and they chop all of it up and put it frozen away.
Yes.
And then also I wanted to say, like, I think our pricing too is on par usually with the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're pricing things, like we'll look at like the organic price list from, you know, the main terminal in like Boston or something. But then we also are like, all right, what's Kroger selling it for? Because then like people come up and like, I'm not going to pay 75 cents for a tomato. And it's like, but they're $1 a pound at Kroger. Okay. But yeah.
Got it. All right.
Mhm.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much. And it doesn't look like, I think whoever's listening, I hope the mics were good, but nobody's complained. So I'm assuming it's pretty good. And so once again, to wrap it up, make sure we get us a nice card. And it might be good for your marketing too, the crop cycles. And we can talk about what classes we can have and continue to support the local farmers. I'm Dr. Chellam, founder of Full Seek and Integrative Center of Novi, the best place for you to find your best doctor. And we're here with Marina and Jason and Chelsea, who are, what's the name of your farm, by the way? Probably we should put that in here.
Right now, our farm is called Two Hounds Farm. It's the
Two Hounds.
farm that we rent.
Okay.
The next year or two, we're going to be switching over to a new farm. It's going to be called Acres of Ambrosia.
Because of ambrosia.
And would you like to say why it's called Ambrosia?
So I was really close with my grandma, and so I'd bring over food for her because, you know, she was on, I think she was like 150% below the poverty line, like all Social Security, like end of the month, and she didn't like splurge. She was so conservative about like what she had, but like every time we bring over food, she'd always take bites of it and be like, oh, ambrosia of the gods. And yeah, and she just passed away in March, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. So, well, thank you so much for
Thank you so
making,
much.
I know it's a lot of your time to kind of leave your farm and come out, so we do appreciate it.
This was my favorite podcast.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
Absolutely. We could relate a lot to what we do too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.